I promise you, on the Hard Rock Lunchbox Oath, simply awful day for me. Future, past. I love creativity in any form. Wendy's is not a sponsor of the Hard Rock Lunchbox, but they could be. If the road is open to make more money and you don't have a conscience, like, why wouldn't you do it? Somebody, somewhere. You know who makes that happen? Government. You're not the little guy. You're a big dummy. Anybody? Any guesses? Anywhere? You don't want to be paying whatever it is for eggs, chicken, milk, and pork? Don't buy it. I am not known for overdressing. A lot of times our heroes really aren't what they seem to be. Be prepared to suck at it for 6 months. If you really disagree with me, don't forget to cast your vote next Wednesday.
Hard Rock Lunchbox.
Greetings and salutations. It's time once again for the Hard Rock Lunchbox. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, it's time for the top 20. It is Halloween, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, we actually made it to Halloween, which is bananas if you've been outside at all lately, because it is not Halloween weather out there at all. It is a balmy ass, almost 80 degrees today. Here in the Northeast. There is potential to set a record. Now, I don't want to be one of those people that starts weather conversations with people, but it is notable that it is just so beautifully warm outside. I had soccer practice with the Hurricanes last night, and I am not known for overdressing, but man, I was I was warm. It was moist and damp and humid and cold and hot all at the same time. I guess as our southern-based weather was making its way to New York, it is quite something to behold, for sure. Yeah, and again, like, I'm not interested in starting weather conversations, but it is definitely notable, so I figured I would note it. So how's everybody doing today? It has been a simply awful day for me. The past couple of days have been nothing but garbage, really, and I'm looking to turn that around and spend 2 hours with you good people and do kind of what we do every week here, just sort of forget about other things that are going on in other corners of the world and our life, and maybe listen to some music, have a few laughs, talk about a few things. So if you're so inclined, you can hop up and join the conversation. 99 WNRR.com. That is the radio station of which this is a live broadcast. Again, unless you're watching this, and then I guess that would be for you in the future. Future? Past? My stomach hurts. I had a bean and cheese burrito on Monday night that I think has finally left the building. I mean, I would do it again, like, make no mistake. But it was definitely playing hide and seek in my intestines there for a while. I don't know what it's going. And it's so funny too, because like I feel like I've been on this quest for a bean and cheese burrito, so I had to make it myself. And because I don't know what is going on in the world with, well, I do. I mean, I understand like all the whole gastropub sort of mentality, but like it is getting so difficult to get simple things anymore. Like there's a new burrito place that opened up. Well, technically it is up the road from me. I want to say it's like Burgeritos or something like that, or it's not that. I got it wrong. Like that's completely fake news here in the box. But I remember being excited, like, oh, cool, like a burrito place is great. And I looked, and everything was just over the top, like interesting creations and stuff. And I'm not taking anything away from that. Like, you want to chef yourself out. You've seen way too many episodes of The Bear. Like, I totally am here for it. Like, I love creativity in any form, anywhere. I feel like I spend more of my time trying to promote creativity in others, especially those that like don't feel like they are creative or don't have anything creative to offer. Like, why wouldn't you just foster that? But more on that in a second. But I remember looking at the menu, and it was like literally all these incredible creations and not a single bean and cheese burrito. And I find that happens in hamburgers too. Like, you go into like any of these burger places, like it is almost impossible to get just a cheeseburger. So you got to like go back to like McDonald's, which, to be perfectly honest, I have definitely been partaking in McDonald's cheeseburgers more over the past couple years than I have in the past 20. And it has been something of a glorious sort of situation. I have said publicly, and Wendy's is not a sponsor of the Hard Rock Lunchbox, but they could be, that one of my favorite fast food things to eat in the world is a Wendy's, I think it's a Junior Cheeseburger Deluxe. It's nice and small. It's got a little fresh tomato. I mean, I don't know that's how they pronounce it. Tomato and lettuce, and I like how simple it is, and I like how cold and refreshing it is because they're not pre-made, like at least not when I get them. But the simplicity of just a McDonald's cheeseburger sometimes, I mean, not right now. Like, I'm going to just publicly state, like, maybe just hold off on the McDonald's cheeseburgers for right now because they're having some onion issues, and that's kind of something. Also, while we're on the topic of that, I don't think anybody in my listening audience that listens anymore particularly disagrees with my stance on certain policies and my ideology of what government is for. But I do want to point out that I think that of the presidents that we've had, and you could definitely make an argument for the former President Trump being the most dangerous that we've had because of his handling of COVID, but I'm not here to criticize that. I feel like I've done enough of this. But one of the most dangerous presidents we've had over the past lifetime or two, I would have to argue would be Ronald Reagan, because what his whole pitch was to most of the country was that we need smaller government. And he wanted to do that because he honestly believed in his ideology was that of somebody that thought government was just here to interfere with business. And what I think he gets wrong, and I think what most people get wrong, is that if government doesn't interfere with business, then business just tends to run amok and do whatever is good for business. And I'm going to cite a couple examples, and then I'm going to bring it into what is happening like right now. So one of the things that businesses want to do is they just want to kind of do whatever they want. And we had examples of that in the 1900s with basically the robber barons that were, child labor, no labor safety laws. They could charge whatever they wanted. They were just competing with each other and takeovers and union busting and all that other stuff. Like that's what businesses do when left to their own devices. They consolidate power and money and influence and all that other stuff. And I can't even say that I blame them. Like, right, if the road is open to make more money and you don't have a conscience, like, why wouldn't you do it? Like, at any cost. And we've all seen over the past 20 years things that have gone down. There have been documentaries about it where companies have decided to not recall stuff like baby formula because they've decided it's more cost effective to just pay off a couple of people instead of paying wrongful deaths than actually fix the problem. We saw that with baby food. We saw that kind of in the opioid crisis. They decided it made more sense to pay off people than to actually do the right thing by the product. And when you deal with businesses that are responsible for shareholder happiness and confidence and stuff like that, like that's what you're going to get out of businesses because that's what they want to do, right? So that's to be expected. And I don't even really fault businesses for that other than, you shouldn't be evil, right? Like, I feel like that should be something, but we can't really rely on people to do that, right? Like, you can argue that people like Zuckerberg and people like Elon Musk are like, they really don't have your best interest at heart at all. And I think they've proven that over and over again. And so expecting businesses to do what businesses do is an intelligent thing. It's an intelligent understanding of the world, right? So what Reagan used to say about business, about government and interfering in businesses is interfering in that. It would keep companies from doing whatever they wanted to do for the best interest of the company. But one of the things the government is supposed to do is oversight. And while I agree there needs to be less bloat in government, one of the most important things they do is this oversight. And people don't really understand what that is, because a lot of times people are like, this is a weird rule, this is a weird regulation. And I totally agree. I live in the town of Huntington, and Huntington has some of the weirdest rules in the world. I know people personally in other townships on Long Island that have tried to do stuff like, I don't know, build a ramp for like a disabled child and stuff, and you have to get permit after approval. Like, you really shouldn't have to do that kind of stuff for something that's very commonsensical, like, in my opinion. Like, in the town of Huntington, I don't believe you're not allowed to have cloven hooved animals on your property, like pigs and stuff like that. I think that's still true. But, the question is why? Like, it seems like a really weird rule, right? And seems like a restrictive rule that really we shouldn't have. But the reason why is because somebody somewhere in the town of Huntington completely abused the fact that there was no rule, and maybe had like 100 pigs, like in a very tenth of an acre place, and ruined life for all of their neighbors, right? That's the kind of stuff that sort of happens. So government stepped in and said, hey, you can't do that. Did they overreach and said, now nobody can do that? Probably. But that also sounds like something my mom would do when either my sister or myself would mess up as a child and be like, okay, now nobody gets to do it. Nobody gets to watch TV. Nobody gets to play Atari. Like, that seems like a real stressed out parent move, and that's kind of one of the things that government does. But the other thing that government does in terms of oversight and regulation is government is the only entity that's really big enough to defend people like you and me. Take what just happened. I was driving home from rehearsal the day that the E. coli thing broke at McDonald's. It was also the same day that a listeria thing broke at Costco over smoked salmon, right? Smoked salmon that I eat. I wasn't currently eating it, and I haven't been eating it lately, but it happens to be the exact brand from the exact place I get it. And the reason they did that was not because they wanted to. They could have quietly let's just keep these to the side. They had to announce it publicly because it's a public safety health issue, and they're required by law to divulge that information and then initiate a recall. You know who makes that happen? Government. Government oversight and government watchdogs. I am a huge believer in government oversight and regulation and watchdogs. I am not a believer or supporter of overregulation or stupid ideas, but I do believe that caring about these things that are going on in the world and defending the little guy, which is you and me, by the way, unless you're watching this, you're not the little guy. You're a big dummy. Like, see the difference? Those are the kinds of things that government is responsible for. And so I think it's a good idea that we kind of lay back at McDonald's for a little while because we don't want their onions. But thank you, government, for actually finding that and forcing them to tell us about it so we can make that decision. I'm also a big believer in oversight when it comes to government programs, right? A lot of talk lately have been going on about we're giving away way too much free money. I agree completely. And I think that the people that need to keep an eye on that would be government watchdogs and government regulators. Like, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should give more money to the people that actually keep an eye on things, right? That's why I'm a big supporter of investing like in the IRS and having the IRS have more agents to do their job properly. Having the IRS have more agents to answer your questions when you're trying to pay your fair share to the big giant government that we have, right? I think these things are important. And one of the other things breaking into the news lately is the issue of the Fed. Now, there's a lot of people, mostly libertarians, that think the Fed is a really horrible idea. Well, in case you don't know what the Fed is basically a board of economists whose sole function is to watch the economy and make sure that the economy is robust and grows and does exactly what you would want the economy to do. People are crapping all over the Fed right now. But to be perfectly honest and to speak truth to nonsense, the Fed has done an incredible job over the past 4 years. And in fact, as of right now, the economy in the U.S. at $22 trillion or whatever it is the strongest in the world. It has also found its way back to almost that 2% inflation mark, which is the standard, which is where they want to be at. They have done an incredible job managing our situation post-COVID to not have a recession, Yeah, prices are higher. I'll deal on that in a second. Prices are higher, but inflation has dropped, and the economy is robust by every single metric there is. Not even just like, well, the stock market's good. The economy is as good as it could possibly be expected to be right now, and arguably it's as good as it's been in years, possibly decades. And that's something that people don't understand, because what they're seeing is higher prices at the market. Some of those prices are justified, some of them are not. And we've talked about price gouging, we've talked about corporate rates and corporate buybacks, because all these companies, I'm going to take that back, a majority of these companies, these big multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies, are investing right now in themselves, in stock buybacks and stuff like that, because they're trying to consolidate wealth and power. They could just take all those profits and lower their prices, but once they raised everything because of inflation, they just kind of left it there. And now, there are two things that can happen with that. We can, as consumers, stop buying all that stuff. There is nothing that bothers me more and more and more than people complaining about the price of things and yet still buying them, right? Like, if you are bothered by the high price to go out and eat dinner, don't do that. Stay at home, make a bean and cheese burrito for less than $5, by the way. Do that. And if you're tired of the price of gas, like, maybe don't drive so much. Take mass transit. If you're tired of the price of cars, don't buy a new car. I drive a 2011 Ford van. I have a 2016 Subaru. I have a 2007 Explorer. I'm not driving a new car because they're too expensive and I don't feel like partaking in that. Don't buy yourself a new $1,800 cell phone. Now, you can make the argument, like, but I want it. You want it because you're a child and you're entitled. You think you're entitled to this because we have a culture of entitlement that is just off the goddamn rails. So if you don't want to pay high prices for things, don't pay high prices for things. Start to economize, like my mom did when she was raising 2 kids. That drives prices down. It always does, because if people aren't buying it, then the price goes down. And if you want proof, just look to any Trump supporters' Facebook page when they post the price of gas at $1.85. You know why it was $1.85 at that time? Does anybody else know what was going on in the latter half of former President Trump's term? Anybody? Any guesses? Anywhere? Right. COVID. You know who wasn't driving? Almost all of us. So you know who wasn't paying a high price for gas? You guessed it, kids. Almost all of us. And what happened to the price of gas? It went down. You don't want to be paying whatever it is for eggs, chicken, milk, and pork? Don't buy it. Buy something cheaper until those prices come down. I promise you, on the Hard Rock Lunchbox Oath, or whatever this means, that if you start doing that, prices will come down. The other way you can do that is have government regulators, people like the FTC, go after companies that are overcharging people for everything. And go after companies like airlines that, while there are 4 of them, 4 major carriers in the United States, they're all price colluding because they're all divvying up the country into different quadrants and regions. So they're able to charge whatever they want because you want to fly somewhere because you've had a hard couple of weeks and you want to fly down to Florida. Well, you're going to hop up on Southwest and you're going to pay whatever they feel like charging you for and whatever seat they feel like sticking you in. I am 6'1". I am north of 200 pounds. I cannot fit in steerage anymore because they've changed the shape of the planes, making the seats smaller. So you know what I don't do? I don't fly. I don't fly if I don't have to. I don't absolutely have to. I don't fly. I'd rather drive. I'll vacation someplace I can drive, and I'll pay the high price of gas. But I also don't drive all that much, so I feel like I'm also doing my part. So that's a little bit about regulation, why I think government is important. If anybody disagrees with me, I'm sorry to hear that, and don't forget to, if you really disagree with me, don't forget to cast your vote next Wednesday. See what I did there? If it feels like I'm rambling, it's because I am. I didn't give much thought to what I was going to talk about today. That actually is not true. I was actually going to talk about the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden and the comparisons to the America First rally during pre-World War II, the anti-Semitic rally that they held in Madison Square Garden, which actual Nazis and Nazi flags. And if you think I'm making it up, please just look it up because it's there. It's actually a really amazing story when you hear about it, because you're like, I can't believe this. And just to give you a little bit of a taste, not everybody was opposed to Germany in World War II in America. In fact, there were quite a few people that were very pro-Germany and what they were doing, and they thought that that world order was going to be a good one. In fact, close to 40% of Americans thought that that was a good idea. So the divisions we're feeling now are not unfamiliar. You're just experiencing them, and you should probably look out for that, because history always repeats itself. Now, on to creativity, shall we? And then we'll get on to the rest of the box. I do not have the words to express just how important I think creativity is. I think that all people, all human beings, have some level of creativity. I don't think that all of them have equal levels of creativity, right? Like there's people like Mozart and people like Michelangelo and people like Da Vinci and even people like Sir Isaac Newton that were creative enough to actually change the world in which we live in. That's some bonkers level nonsense. Like in terms of creativity, like that is just genius and amazing. If that is your goal, I don't think you're going to hit it all the time. I know a lot of people. I don't know anybody, I don't think, that reaches that sort of level of creative genius. That being said, I know some incredibly creative people. And more than that, I know some incredibly creative people that don't even know that they're creative. And I feel like that is who I'm speaking to right now. Because the loss for them and for the world around them to not engage in that creativity, I think is a huge, huge problem. So I've spent a lot of my life trying to encourage some of that in people that I know and care about, because I think it's important. And the reason I do that, in like a lot of what we do in our lives, right, really does get fostered by our prior experiences, which usually stems out of like our birth families, right? And I know a lot of people that have had really good birth families. I know more people that have had a lot of problems that have really damaged them over the years because of it. Because birth families aren't perfect. They aren't. They're human too, and a lot of times they're trying to do their best. But a lot of times people just don't realize the damage they can be doing to other people. So I feel like spending a little time trying to undo, or at least be supportive of those people that have experienced those things, I think is a worthwhile cause. For me, I kind of made that change in my life when I was I guess I was like a middle-aged teenager, right? And I remember it vividly. I remember it vividly because it was one of the most devastating things that had ever happened to me in this creative area, in music and all that other stuff. I was sitting in New Jersey. I was sitting at I guess it was my grandmother's house, my father's mother's house. I think I was sitting with my uncle, who, if you've seen any shows, Revel 9 shows in New Jersey, you've probably met. And I was sitting with my father, and we were sitting around. I believe my father was playing guitar, and he was doing something, and he was singing along. My father could sing, he was never a lead singer. He was he always sang backups and stuff, and that was about the most he was able to do. But he was a brilliant guitar player, for sure. So I idolized him as a guitar player and as an aspiring guitar player. By that age, I was already playing myself, mainly because he had played and I wanted to be like him. And a lot of times our heroes really aren't what they seem to be when we're young. But I was sitting with him, and he was singing something, and I was singing along in harmony. Now, to be fair to myself, I was actually singing a pretty decent harmony to what he was singing. I was not somebody that was comfortable singing in public. I'm still not at my incredibly advanced age. But I sang something, and he was like, "Oh, was that a harmony?" And then he had me do it again, and I was so nervous that I couldn't sing it well. And he was like, no, I didn't think so. And now that incident, while it seems fairly benign and maybe even like not important, kept me from singing anything other than the simplest of backups for the next decade. That one situation set my vocal career back 10 years, because that could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone the way it did, and you insult a child that's trying to do something creative, or you could have been like, all right, well, maybe try this, or that was pretty good, like, how about this? And then from that moment, I probably would have started singing, and I probably would have started my musical career vocally much, much earlier Instead, I didn't start singing lead till the very end of my band G Davy, and even then it was not great, and it took a little while till I could get comfortable enough and did it enough to become more creative and more confident and more powerful in what I was doing. So all of that has shaped my worldview on people's creativity, and I tell everybody, anytime you're going to try something new like that or step outside your comfort zone or whatever, be prepared to suck at it for 6 months. I feel like that's overshooting, but I feel like it gives everybody a goal they can probably achieve. Because I think it's important for people to try stuff, fail at it, but try again. And I think it's important for others, the people around you, the people that care about you, to point out or maybe even think, like, okay, this isn't perfect, but I can see where this is going. And just to embrace and love the attempt. Because isn't that really what creativity is at the end of the day? Like trying something new, stepping outside of something you do every single day. You see it in sciences, you see it in arts for sure. You see it in food. You see it just in the way people are with each other. I have never seen a downside, ever, in supporting somebody else's creativity. And all I ever find is some sort of upside for them and the world after they give it a shot. And sometimes they get really, really good at it. And I think that message of positivity, as unusual as it is to hear something like that this early on the box, I think is important. And I think it's something we should embrace. I think it'll also lead to maybe being in a kinder space in the world and the people around you. And maybe we just start looking at things like that a little bit more often and see what happens. I think we've done division and hate for a long time. People like to think it started with President Trump. It didn't. It became noticeable to me when President Obama first got elected. And I don't even know why that was, other than just sheer racism, honestly, at that point. But that's where those divides come from. So maybe if we just kind of unite a little bit on this very simple and basic premise of supporting each other and the things that we're trying to do and the creative ways we're trying to make our lives and ourselves and our world better, who knows? Maybe things will even get better. Probably not. But it's the least I can do. And it's honestly the only thing I can think of that's positive right now. The only thing I can think of to do positive right now. And I figured I'd just share that with you. And hopefully you'll take something away from that. So I've wasted enough of your time. Let's start the box as we always do with something local, undersigned, and probably underappreciated by lots of people except us here at the box. This is a classic. Yeah, definitely a classic.
They say